Hi, Greg Alderman. Welcome to One Voice Board. I want to start with a question with you and invite you to just press pause and consider it. Is my board effective in its work? Well, if you took some time to answer that question, you could probably think about places where, yes, you are effective, and you could probably think about some other areas where you're not. I'm going to talk about 6 marks of ineffective boards today, and maybe these will be some things that can help you realize whether or not your board is being effective in its work. And here's the first mark of an ineffective board. It spends most of its time on the trivial. I want you to think about the last agenda for your most recent board meeting. How was that agenda put together? And did that agenda reflect, in terms of the amount of time dedicated to each item, that the time was devoted not only appropriately to the important items, but also the important items were discussed first and the trivial items were saved for later on. I've been in plenty of board meetings where the agenda is set up and they leave the most important item till the end of the meeting when everybody's tired and they've already spent a couple hours or however long the meeting is chasing after details on trivial matters before they ever get to the meat of the most important items. I've learned through the years that if we're going to meet, we might as well meet and deal with the most important items first. And if we have time for the trivial, we'll get to it. But always deal with the most important items on the agenda first. Here's a second mark of ineffective boards. They operate with a short-term bias. Now, you've heard me talk about, if you've watched any of my training videos, that the board always needs to be focused up and out. It needs to be focused on goal development. It needs to be focused on where are we going? Where are we going to be in 5 years? It can't just be thinking about a month-to-month basis and looking at what did we do last month and what are we going to do next month. No, it needs to have an up and out view of the future and where we're being led together as a church or as a nonprofit. And if the board's not doing that, it's not happening in the church. So we need to operate not with a short-term bias. That's what ineffective boards do. We need to operate with a long-term bias. Where are we going in the next 5, 10, or so many years? The third mark of an ineffective board is that the board functions from a reactive stance rather than a proactive stance. We're always reacting. Think about it. If the last several important conversations at your board meeting were reacting to conflict or difficulty experienced in the church or in the organization, then your board is in a reactive stance. And that's the mark of an ineffective board. Instead, healthy boards are being proactive. They're setting the direction. Yes, they take time to deal with stuff they need to react to, in other words, conflict and other things like that. But the most important part of their time is spent on being proactive, focusing on their goal development, focusing on accountability, focusing on setting the direction for the organization. The fourth mark of an ineffective board is that it spends most of its time reviewing, rehashing, and redoing previous work. This is the part that drives me crazy, and I've talked about this in my Proverbs, and I've talked about this when I've gone through the principles of governance, if you've watched those videos. But if we delegate work, then we need to let the group or the staff or the committee that we delegate it to do the work. We don't redo the work of the groups we've delegated to when they bring their proposals back to the board. That's super important. A fifth mark of an ineffective board is it allows for leaky accountability. It has leaks. In other words, no accountability. And there's a couple different errors here. Sometimes it's setting goals and then not describing who's responsible for achieving that goal. Sometimes it's setting goals and actually putting more than one person in charge of accomplishing that goal. That's a two-headed monster. Sometimes it's having goals, naming the person who's in charge, but not actually holding them accountable and measuring their effectiveness for achieving those goals. There's all kinds of ways we can be leaky, have leaks in our accountability structure. Ineffective boards don't do it well, and that's why they're ineffective. And the sixth mark of an ineffective board is that it insists on a diffusion of authority. Oh, I love this idea where we don't want to actually have a leader. We're just going to have committees in charge. I love the fact that when God reached down from heaven, he didn't give us a committee. He gave us a king. He gave us a leader in the person of Jesus Christ. And if you read through the stories and the narratives of not only the book of Acts, but also early church history, yes, there are apostles meetings and other groups meetings, but they're always meeting together, deliberating, and then they're appointing leaders to go out and carry out tasks. Pastors to go plant churches, missionaries to go out and spread the gospel. They're appointing individuals to govern and to carry out leadership. It should be no different today. God didn't grant us a committee to manage and lead. He gave us leaders, and the board governs a leader by setting directions for that leader and then holding that leader accountable. That, I believe, is a biblical model. Ineffective boards don't do that, and that's why they remain ineffective. Hey, if anything I talked about is helpful or you want to learn more about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at greg@onevoiceboard.org.